start hearing that football music, it's time to talk some football. And you see by our beautiful blue background and my nice little hat and shirt, we are talking Giants football. Today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Crest Cadillac down there on Automobile Row on West Genesee Street in Syracuse. Go see our friends at Crest Cadillac today. And we bring in our Giants insider. We're going to be talking to him all season long, but we're still in preseason camp right now. Let's talk with the one, the only from Big Blue View. It's Ed Valentine. What's up, Ed? How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Not hiding your allegiance at all today, are you there, man?
No, I'm not. I'm just totally biased today. That's one of the beautiful things about the podcast world. No bosses to answer to, Ed. Just me and Paul. We answer to each other. We want to wear gear. We can wear gear. I got Eli over my shoulder here. I know you can't see it too good in the 3-shot. Yeah. So, absolutely. Yeah. We're blowing it up here. We're blowing it up, going all things Giants. Got the beautiful little, if you go back to the 3-shot there, Boy Green, go back to the beautiful Giants backdrop here. Notice the little new Giants logos there right underneath me here, changing from year to year. We've had a lot of different logos. I do like this traditional NY, by the way. I don't know if that's one of your faves or not. You've been at practice. Last time we saw you, you were hanging in the bushes, which was awesome. Kind of joking around about that. But yeah, let's talk about Giants camp. You've been spending a lot of time there, and obviously the last couple of days, it's been the Jets and the Giants tussling as they get ready for the Snoopy Bowl on Saturday. Me and Boy Green ready to go at it, even in the preseason. So talk about what you saw and how this thing is coming along for Brian Daboll and company.
Well, speaking of tussles, there were a couple. But you kind of have to expect that. I mean, the Giants, I think, took a little bit of exception to some of the physicality, from the Jets on Wednesday. And as Marcus Bowe, the rookie offensive lineman, said when he watched a couple of his veteran teammates jump into a fray there, he said that's smart retaliation. So smart retaliation. No punches were thrown. Smart retaliation because they stood up to it. But anyway, these joint practices, they're pushing, shoving. At least they didn't devolve into punches being thrown and all that. These joint practices are great work because these guys, the preseason is too short. I don't think they play enough snaps. And I kind of get it because of the injury risk, but that's why you see so much sloppy football, I think, at the beginning of the season. These joint practices are great. I thought the Giants' defense, as expected, I think pretty much won both days. That Justin Fields said, that front seven is really good. That front seven, Abdul Carter is as advertised. Brian Burns looks phenomenal. That front seven put a lot of pressure on the Jets over those 2 days. The run defense looked pretty good. The offense is up and down. I look at the Giants as a team that they're going to win games with their defense. They're going to win games with their defense. They're going to win games with big plays on offense and opportunistic offense when the defense kind of sets them up, for opportunities. So I think that's what we're going to see from the Giants is a lot of what we saw, over the 2 days with the Jets.
Ed, Aaron Glenn, speaking from a Jets perspective here, he has been doing a lot of live tackling in training camp, but he said leading up into these joint practices with Coach Brian Daboll and company that they would confer privately and discuss the things they'd want to do. Ultimately, they decided no live tackling for the Giants. Is that not something the Giants have been doing a lot in camp?
That is something that Brian Daboll has never done in camp.
Okay, there you go.
So, they do, what they call the thud tackle, throw the shoulder in, sort of wrap the guy up. But bringing players to the ground is something that has never been done in a Daboll camp. It honestly has rarely been done in any of the Giants camps that I've ever covered, even going back to Tom Coughlin. As tough as Tom Coughlin could be, Coughlin during a lot of his era, it was still 2-a-days, but there still wasn't a lot of live tackling. I can still hear Coughlin screaming, "Stay up, stay up, stay up." He didn't want guys on the ground. And even when Coughlin spoke to the team the other day, the last thing he said was, "Stay up, stay healthy." Which I love Coach Coughlin. I've had a chance to talk to him a few times, and he's such at this point, he's just a nice old man to talk to at this point,
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't live tackle. So, and I know the Jets do at times, and so there's a different philosophy. I kind of wish they would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I keep meaning to ask Coach Dable why, they'll hit pads and practice tackling and all that stuff. I keep meaning to ask Coach Dable why they don't purchase some of those tackling robots.
Right, that move around. Yeah, technology.
Those things go 16 or 17 miles an hour. Why don't you tackle those?
Yeah. That would make a lot of sense.
Coming at you.
There you go.
We have had a preseason game since we last talked, Ed. I know we're getting ready for another one against Jets. But we saw some things in that preseason game. I'm going to pop a video on here. Jackson Dart had this touchdown. It's a beautiful throw. Let's take a look at it, and you can describe it. We'll talk about it.
Well, this is the 28-yard throw to Lil Jordan Humphrey, who's a massive, 6'4", 225-pound jump ball specialist.
Not so little.
Not so little. No, but so many impressive things about that particular throw. I mean, I saw Chase Daniel, former NFL quarterback, break this thing down, and he pointed out the fact that this was basically an audible or an adjustment from Jackson Dart with a little hand signal to Humphrey, asking him to go deep on the play. It's a perfectly thrown football. And it's also impressive because Jackson Dart had a rusher right in his face who hit him as soon as he let the ball go. So it was impressive on a lot of levels. I wrote after the game that Dart showed the Giants everything they wanted to see. In a first-round pick and a guy that's going to be, he's eventually going to be their quarterback. That's not week 1, probably not week 2, but eventually he's their guy. And he showed them, all of the reasons why they drafted him.
Now,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead. The only thing I wanted to add here is, when joint practice happen typically between teams, they're becoming a lot more frequent. Most of the time, the starters from those respective teams don't play the preseason game. Their preseason game, quote unquote, was the joint practices that happened. That's happened for the Jets the last couple of years. Anytime we saw and the starters would obviously play in the joint practices, that they wouldn't then play in the preseason game. I'm sure Brian Dable, who's always so giving with information, already informed you guys of this. But have the Giants have joint practice in the past during Dable's run? I would imagine they have. And what's the consistency there? If they do play in the joint practice, do they not play in the game? What's normally the plan there? What's your expectation?
Well, that is normally the way things go, and let's put it this way. Dable is so forthcoming with information about preseason game playing time that we haven't bothered to ask him yet this week.
Oh, okay.
We speak to him later on Thursday morning. As we do this, it's mid-morning on Thursday, and I'm sure that will be a big topic of conversation. Historically, you're right. These guys don't generally play. The starters don't generally play after the 2 padded practices, joint practices like that. I'm curious this week, though, because we're in the second week of camp. The Giants have usually had joint practices before their first preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and teams don't generally like to play their starters in the third preseason game.
Correct.
So So I'm curious, although I don't know about you guys, but I actually disagree with that philosophy when you look at the way the NFL schedule is, because if you don't play in the third preseason game, you go 22 days from the second preseason game to the season opener. You go 22 days without real competition. Obviously you're practicing, but you're not hitting and practicing and at the same level that you would be in a game or even in a joint practice. So my preference would be to see these guys not play on Saturday and then, play a half a game on Thursday against the Patriots. But I don't know if Brian Daboll's going to do that.
Well, Ed, it's been a long time since the days of Mark Bavaro. Even if you want to go back to Jeremy Shockey, I don't know who else we want to name as illustrious tight ends in the history of Giants football, but I've always loved the tight end position and was seeing a little action this year, at least in the preseason with the tight ends. This guy, Theo Johnson, popping a little bit. Also, we know about Bellinger as well. So let's talk about the Giants tight end situation. And is it going to be a bit better this year? We're going to see a little bit more in terms of the tight ends catching the ball.
Well, I certainly hope so. If you look at the wide receiver situation, the Giants have Malik Nabers, who's a star. Do they clearly have a number 2 wide receiver? We can argue, is Darius Slayton really a number 2? Is he a guy that can step up like that? He's a good player. I don't know if you fully consider him a number 2. Wan'Dale Robinson caught 93 balls last year, but it was mostly catch and fall down kind of stuff. Is he a number 2? Is Jalen Hyatt even a legitimate NFL wide receiver at this point? I still don't know. I truly wonder if the second option in this passing attack is going to become Theo Johnson. I really do. I think the potential for that is definitely there.
Interesting. Okay, well, I gotta write that one down.
That one, Boy Green. Hey, no, that's not for fantasy drafts. Stay the heck away.
Right. Of course.
Giant tight ends. That's what I get for bringing that up. Hey, let me go back to Hyatt for a second, because Ed, I know we love to live in a world of hot takes and headlines, but there is some speculation, some rumor that's been kind of bubbling a little bit about Jalen Hyatt's future with the Giants, and could he even potentially be cut? I know he was a third rounder, so that's an investment that a team makes, but at some point you need for the performance to match the draft pick. So tell us the latest on Jalen Hyatt and how much on the bubble might he be coming out of this year's camp?
I don't honestly think he's on the bubble per se. I think that the Giants love the idea of Hyatt's speed matching Russell Wilson's ability to throw that deep ball. And the same with Jackson Dart, who seems, Dart's got a good arm, good deep ball. And Jameis Winston has a better arm than any of them.
Yeah.
So I think they love the idea and the potential of Hyatt's speed being able to make plays for them. And we saw it a few times in the spring. But things ramp up in training camp. And then they ramp up again in preseason games, and they ramp up for real in the regular season. And I have to be honest, we haven't seen any of it since training camp started. We really haven't seen any of it. Hyatt's been dealing with a leg injury, and I love the kid. I've talked to him a number of times. He's a really good kid. But I just don't know. I don't think the Giants will cut him just because they don't have anybody else like him. But and they do have a third round pick invested, as you guys mentioned, and teams hate to give up on those early draft picks. They hate to give up on those guys too soon. But I just don't know that Jalen Hyatt's ever going to be, a reliable, third or fourth wide receiver. I have to see it. I have to see it to believe it at this point. We've heard 2.5 years of hype now with Jalen Hyatt, and we really haven't seen enough on the field to back it up yet.
Fair enough. Ed, let me go back to the Jets-Giant joint practice. It's a cool way for me to get this in as the quiet Jets guy in the room. Is Ed? No, I'm just curious your observations. I was there for the Jets-Giant joint practice in Jets homeland for the home turf. I got to enjoy that practice, but I'm curious from your perspective as a Giants guy going in. Were there any Jets players that sort of turned your heads and it turned your head and you went, "Whoa, okay, that guy was someone that stood out to me in some way"?
I don't think it was a specific player, to be honest with you. I mean, my focus was so much on the Giants, but what I will say is that's a really good defense. You know, that to me, that's a really good defense. You know, it's a physical football team. So, you know, I don't know, you know, the Giants defense is also really good. And I thought clearly had the better of the Jets the 2 days. I don't know how you feel about the offensive line that's in front of Justin Fields, but Justin Fields spent a lot of time being chased on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah, I will say to carry over on that Jet fans and the Jets team are very high on their offensive line. Everyone's 27 or younger, so they like the group that's there. And they were all, especially Aaron Glenn, head coach Aaron Glenn, he was sort of juiced up like, oh, look at this opportunity. This Giants defensive line may be the best in football. And when I'm going to tell you, when I was from the stands and I just saw them, because, you know, before plays are happening, there's people take water breaks and all kinds of things. And I just saw the four Giants standing next to each other with their hands on their hips. And I'm just looking from left to right from the stands. I go like Abdul Carter. Okay. Brian Burns. All right. Dexter Lawrence. Okay. And then Kayvon Thibodeau. I went, good Lord have mercy. And I just turned to like a Jets fan.
Good group, right?
I'm like, oh God. And then I just did a prayer real quick.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, let's see what happens.
You know, you're fortunately Justin Fields, you know, was wearing, you know, one of those jerseys and he couldn't get hit. So,
that's right.
You know, so there was that. I do have to tell you, Dexter Lawrence, there may only be one human being that I've ever stood in front of or stood next to who might be bigger than Dexter Lawrence. We had a chance to talk to Dexter on Tuesday, and I stood next to him, and the man, like, he blocks out like an entire community when you try to, you know, when you stand in front of him. But the only guy I will tell you, and you guys will appreciate this, I had a chance at the NFL Combine a couple years ago to talk to Mekhi Becton the year he was drafted.
Oh, he's a big boy.
And I walked up to Becton's podium and I wanted to ask him a question. And when it came my turn to ask him the question, mind you, he's up on an elevated podium.
Of course.
So I looked up and I see this massive human being who is so big, I couldn't speak. I couldn't get the question out. Tom Rock of Newsday, who, thank God for Tom Rock of Newsday, who was standing behind me because he basically punched me in the back and woke me up so that I could spit out the question. I was so flabbergasted I couldn't speak.
Again, is massive.
I've been in front of two very large human beings outside of the football world, and they were the two most freakish I've ever been in the presence of. One was Shaquille O'Neal, who shook my hand, and when his hand came over mine, I was like, it was like he had to use two fingers to shake my little tiny hand because his hand was so big. The other was Yao Ming, and if you've ever been in that guy's presence, I mean, no. I'm so mad that I didn't take a picture, because when you take a picture as a normal size person, as I am, 5'11", normal 160-pound guy, next to Yao Ming, you look like this tiny little ant, like you belong on the Lilliputians of Gulliver's Travels kind of thing, kind of way, way crazy kind of thing. Hey, let me talk to you about something fun that happened in camp, and I don't know if you were actually there when it happened, but I'm sure you've read about it if you didn't actually see it. So this guy, Abdul Carter, the Giants, I guess, at the end of these practices and these training camp sessions, schedule guys to come over to the podium. And so Abdul Carter was one of the guys on the list. So he headed over to the podium. But as he was arriving, another guy arrived and basically said, "Hey, Rook, get the heck out of here." And that was this guy, Brian Burns. And so there was a little comical moment where the vet basically pulled the rug out from under the feet of the rookie, and Abdul Carter indeed did get up, and Brian Burns got to speak first, and then he was able to head off and do his whatever he does after practice, relaxing, whatever he does. So that's an unusual situation to see Abdul Carter upstage, but this is the old veteran rookie thing. We forget, Abdul Carter's such a freak. He's such a large man, but at the same token, he is still a rookie.
Absolutely. And I happened to be standing at the podium. And I have never seen anything quite like this, because the practice is outside. Okay, it was a beautiful hot day. Practice is outside. All of the interviews during training camp, the preseason at this time of year, they're all held inside in the Giants indoor practice facility. So the podium is all set up there with the Giants background behind it. And I'm just standing there waiting for one of these guys to show up. And all of a sudden, you hear these guys coming, and Abdul Carter is coming on a dead run. And Brian Burns is trying to keep up with him, but he's about 4 steps behind. And Carter gets to the podium, and he bangs his fists down on the podium, and he starts to speak. And Burns gets there, and he says, this bleep ain't happening. You go over there. You go over there. He says, this bleep ain't happening. And somebody says, he says, Brian, he said, was that a veteran move, kicking the rookie off the podium? And he says, damn right. Damn right. But I started even funnier. I started to ask Burns a question to kick off the press conference. And he was breathing so hard from chasing down Carter. He was breathing so hard that he's doubled over at the podium, and he's like, you got to give me a minute. You got to give me a minute here.
So age coming through there.
So, but yeah, that was, I've never quite seen that before, but
that's cool.
That's a good one. I love that story. Ed, I just want to go back to this because, me and Lerch were sort of joking about it at the beginning that we're going to be, mortal enemies this week, obviously with Jets, Giants, Snoopy Bowl and all that jazz. But really, what is the relationship like? Because it's crazy, right? Justin Fields was talking about this the other day that, him and Russell Wilson in the same quarterback room, they both end up in the New York market, one in Giants land, one in Jets land, and they seem really friendly. And it seems like a lot of the Jets and Giants players, from what I've seen from the outside, seem really friendly in that normal atmosphere. Is there still any heat here? Because Jet fans get really bothered when they're called the little brother and all these things that happen to the Giants' obvious, recent success and historical success with Super Bowls and everything else. Is there a beef here? Is there a rivalry, or is that manufactured by fans and media?
Oh, I think there's competition. All right. These guys are friendly off the field. They go out, they see each other around New Jersey, of course, because, they're out and about, and a lot of these guys know each other, but I think they know they share a stadium. They know they share a city, or two cities, and they get it. So there's competition. There's a little bit of juice there, and I think in a setting like those joint practices where there's Giants fans and Jets fans there, that juices it up a little bit. And by the way, and the friggin' Jets get their own stadium.
I'd love it. Let's go. I heard that there is.
Come on, get your own place. Get out of our building.
And let me make this clear. Jet fans would love nothing more than to separate. Getting called the little brother all the time, there'd be nothing more than getting our own stadium so it's its own beast. And apparently, I don't know this is legalese above my head, but there's some potential Jets contract opt-out coming here in the near future where they would have the opportunity to hit the eject button and thus start the plans for the other. I don't know if you've heard any of that action or know anything about that, Ed.
I do not, but it would be fine with me, and it would be fine with every Giants fan, I think, if that were to happen. But back to your original question, there's some juice there. There has to be, just because they share a stadium, they share a city. They hear despite the fact that they tell you they don't listen, they hear some of the noise. So there's a little juice there.
Yeah, I'd like to be the team that moves. Let's go to New York. Let's have the New York team play in New York, Ed, rather than the New York team play in New Jersey. I'm a big proponent of that. I'm a native New Yorker. I don't like this whole Jersey thing, but I understand land and parking, but it's a heck in a handbasket, as you know, to get out of that stadium or get into that stadium coming and going out of a game. So is it going to be any worse if it's in beautiful downtown Manhattan right along the water? Hey, I've gone to Pittsburgh a few times. It's pretty nice sitting in those stadiums. Not quite as metropolis as New York is, but you get my point.
I don't disagree, and here's my thing about that. If they're going to be in New Jersey, you were talking about your hat and your shirt, at the beginning of the show. Mm-hmm. I am not a big fan of the lowercase ny. I'm just not. I'm just not a big fan of the lowercase ny. They're in New Jersey. I want uppercase Giants across the side of the helmet. I don't want that NY on the side of the helmet. That lowercase ny just doesn't do anything for me. I see your little logo down there at the bottom with the helmet that's got Giants on it.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see on a regular basis.
Okay, we'll see if we can put in a good word there for Ed, and I'll return favor whenever we hear back.
Hey, let me just bust out real quick, Boy Green.
Yes, please.
Today's broadcast, as I mentioned, brought to you by our friends at Crest Cadillac. Let's just take 30 seconds, learn a little bit more about our friends at Crest.
Cadillac certified pre-owned vehicles, exclusively available in Central New York at your participating Cadillac dealer, Crest Cadillac. Each one must meet high standards and receives a 172-point inspection, along with a 1-year unlimited mile warranty after the original warranty expires. Come into Crest Cadillac in Syracuse today for exceptional offers on Cadillac certified pre-owned models. CrestCadillac.com.
All right, we are back talking with Ed Valentine, Big Blue View. It's the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. Don't forget to like our video by clicking the thumbs up. Also subscribe at MC Show Digital. Ed, I don't think we've mentioned this to you, but we're giving away a beautiful framed David Tyree The Catch photograph that David autographed for me a number of years ago to one of our first 300 subscribers. So we're closing in on 300. We've only been here in this digital world for about 6 weeks. We just eclipsed 50,000 views, so we're very excited that people are coming to our channel and are getting some benefit out of it, and it's because of folks like you. So again, thanks for spending a little bit of time every week talking Giants with us. We appreciate all our regulars who come in and join us, so very, very exciting stuff. All right, listen, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is outside of the Giants world a little bit, but it's this guy. He's in a Giants uniform here, but he doesn't wear one anymore, and he's been catching some flack as a Miami Dolphin. Darren Waller, of course, came out of retirement, and the Giants jettisoned him off to the Miami Dolphins, and it has not been paradise, as they say, with Miami. Have any of the people been talking about this? Has this been creating any kind of rumor mill when you've been at camp and so forth about what's going on with Darren Waller in Miami?
We haven't really discussed it a whole lot, but I'm still trying to digest why Darren Waller is back, trying to play football in Miami. I think the question for Darren Waller or about Darren Waller has always been, does he actually love the game?
Yeah.
And I don't know that he does. I think that Darren Waller owed the game of football a lot because, he had all of his addiction issues and all of that. And the game of football really helped him, reorient, straighten out his life. And he was, and in his prime, he was a tremendous player, but I don't think he ever really loved it. I think Darren Waller's a guy who, obviously he's past his prime. I just really wonder if Darren Waller really knows what he wants to do with his life at this point.
Yeah.
So again, I was very, very surprised that he decided to come back. The Giants, of course, will be happy with whatever draft pick they got for that, for a guy who was never going to play for them again. And in all honesty, I mean, I wish the guy well. He's not a bad guy. He's just got to figure out what it is that he really wants to do, with his life at this point.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Let me ask you about Nabers, because again, Brian Dable, information giver, that's his nickname. I'm sure that was his nickname in high school. Malik Nabers, what's the injury report there? Because Jet fans claim that Malik Nabers was running scared from Sauce Gardner. He was ducking sauce in the locker room, not participating in that Jets-Giants joint practice with Jet fans there. So what's the latest with Malik Nabers? What's going on with this injury?
I have to admit, I was really disappointed not to see a Nabers Sauce Gardner matchup. All right. And again, at this point, I know as much as you do when it comes to why Malik Nabers has not practiced for the last few days. I have an idea, but Malik Nabers missed the entire spring with what the Giants called a toe injury or toe issue that they said he has dealt with since his time at LSU. And Nabers said that surgery was discussed, but ruled out because they felt he didn't need it and he didn't want it. Okay. He didn't want it. They felt he could manage the toe. They kept him off the field all spring. He looked really, really good the first couple of weeks of training camp. And typically, the Giants have not said he's off the field again because of the toe injury. So for all we know, it has nothing to do with the toe, but could be something else. But you have to have your suspicions that it's the toe injury again, because they've said it's a long-term thing that he's going to have to manage. So it just makes you, it makes you wonder, if this is something he's going to have to manage all year. How much is he going to be able to practice throughout the season? And if it is the toe, is it something that in retrospect that he should have had taken care of?
Yeah.
So Ed, real quick, what's the concern level for you at this point with Malik Nabers?
I'm almost 100% positive that we'll see Malik Nabers on the field week 1. I don't have any doubt about that whatsoever. To be honest with you, my concern with the Giants in terms of star players who may or may not be on the field, my concern level is much higher with Andrew Thomas than it is with Malik Nabers in the short term, because Andrew Thomas is a 315, 320-pound man, had the Lisfranc surgery, the middle of last season, still on the physically unable to perform list. We've only seen him out on the practice field 2 or 3 times doing running and agility drills. If he was fully healthy, I would have expected to see him off the PUP list at this point, and maybe if not, taking full contact in these joint practices, at least doing the individuals, doing the walkthroughs, beginning to get ready for the season. There's 3.5 weeks before the season starts, and Andrew Thomas hasn't practiced once. And we don't know when he is going to come off the PUP list. So if you want to compare apples to apples, all right, Theo Johnson, who we talked about earlier, had the same surgery. And every injury is different, okay? Every injury is different. But he had the same Lisfranc surgery, okay? Theo Johnson has been a full practice participant since the first day of OTAs. We haven't seen Andrew Thomas on the field at all. So for me, that's a massive concern.
Yeah, big guys with foot injuries. The more weight you put on that foot,
Yep.
Not that Theo's a small guy; he's not small either. But I mean, Andrew Thomas is a mountain of a guy,
right?
And the feet, you just can't fix the feet when they're not fixed. I offer you Bill Walton,
absolutely,
a guy that came out of college and was going to be the next Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and his feet killed him. And while he still had a nice NBA career, his feet never allowed him to be the great player that he could have become. So big guys with feet, look out. That can be a big problem. So let me follow up on that, Ed, and ask you about James Hudson, who to me was not that impressive in preseason game number 1. I understand it's just the preseason. This guy is being forced now to move over to left tackle. What should the level of concern be if Thomas is not ready to go by the opener and Hudson has to take that spot?
Well, the Giants love Hudson. They like his energy. They like his competitiveness. They like his athleticism. The issue with Hudson is a little bit of consistency, and we saw it against Buffalo where he had penalties on back-to-back plays. He had a false start, and then he had a holding penalty, and that moved the Giants from the 27-yard line to the 42. So it took them out of from a potential touchdown, to having to settle for a field goal. And those, you miss 4 points and those things can cost you football games. So there's some concern. All they want from James Hudson is to be functional and to hopefully not commit those drive-killing penalties. The really interesting thing to watch is 5th-round pick Marcus Bowe. Okay. This is a kid who there were so many questions about, could this kid be an NFL tackle? Did he have to move to guard? Was he physical enough? Was he strong enough? This kid has been really good. Okay. He's been really good the entire training camp. He is increasingly getting more and more reps at left tackle, which is interesting because he played right tackle and right guard, in college. Came in, said, I can play all 5 spots. The Giants have used him at tackle. And it's funny, I got to talk to him a couple days ago, and I asked him about all those questions about whether he had to move to guard at the NFL level. And I said, in your heart, I said, do you believe that you are an NFL tackle? He looked at me and he said, yeah. And then he paused for a minute and he just said, what do you think?
Interesting.
And that was it. What do you think?
Let me just ask you a straight up question. Are we being sold a bill of goods that the Giants have a good offensive line or a much improved offensive line? Or is this still a position of concern for Giants fans?
Oh, it's always a position of concern for Giants fans. I think if Andrew Thomas can play and be some semblance of himself, if Andrew Thomas can play, they can be a competent, functional offensive line. And especially, we haven't mentioned him at all, but especially if Evan Neal can be a quality guard, that's a good thing for the New York Giants. Greg Van Roten is, he's an adequate stopgap player at the right guard spot. Evan Neal is a mountain who can be a dominant run blocker. If he can play guard at a good level, that massively improves this offensive line. I know people worry about John Michael Schmitz, and I don't blame them for that. But I think, especially with Thomas out there, I think this is a competent offensive line. It's not the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not a top 5 in the NFL group. But if Andrew Thomas can play, I think they're competent. They were middle of the pack last year as an offensive line until Thomas got hurt. And I see no reason why they can't be at least that again this year if he can play a reasonable number of games and play at a fairly high level.
Is the ceiling top 15? Is the ceiling top 10? What do you think the ceiling is for this group?
For the offensive line, I would take top 15. I would take top 15, top 16. I would take middle of the pack.
Okay.
I'm not buying this hype from Jackson Dart that he's never seen such a great pocket to pass from.
I
That's what that is. That is just hyping up your teammates and
of course
and all that. But it's a competent group. Look, John Runyon, who's a decent NFL player, played all of last season with a separated shoulder. it can't be easy to try to block 320-pound men with one healthy arm.
Okay.
You know, so I'm optimistic about it, but I certainly absolutely understand Giants fans have PTSD when it comes to the offensive line, and I get it because they probably should.
Yeah.
but I think there's reason to think that this group can be pretty competent.
Yeah, I'm having a flashback right now. Oh, yeah.
Lerch, you're in a safe space. You're in a safe space.
It was once a time, Ed, and I know it's, you
Sorry
and I
about
can
that.
certainly remember it when, offensive line was just a given for the Giants every year. That was the tried and true. And let's worry about the rest of the team. And now every year, all I'm ever worried about is that offensive line. And I mean, just to quickly go back to this preseason game, and this will be it for me today. What I didn't like is I wasn't seeing them blowing any holes open run blocking. If you can't run block in the NFL as an offensive line, you aren't a good offensive line. That's the way I see it. I mean, pass blocking to me comes after run blocking. I want to see holes open for running backs. We got big concerns at the running back position. We need some holes, baby. We can't be 3rd and 9 all day long. Forget it.
No, I agree. And this is why Andrew Thomas is so important. When he's healthy, he's a lockdown pass protector, but he's also, he's an all-pro player, and he's your best lineman, and he improves the run blocking and the pass blocking. And this is also why I think the Giants are hopeful that Evan Neal can win that job. They're not going to hand him that job. They're not, they're going to make him earn it. But look, Evan Neal is a 6'7", 340, 350-pound man. When the Giants go into a huddle, you can find Evan Neal easily. Okay. And I said this to somebody the other day. The one thing that people complain about with John Michael Schmitz, the biggest thing they complain about is his lack of ability to handle power, to handle the big, strong guys that can really push him back. Well, Evan Neal at 6'7", 340, a guy who you can't move when you hit him in the chest, would sort of help that.
Yeah, I think
so. So we'll see what happens, but I'm optimistic.
I hate to use the B word with that one. B-U-S-T, Izzy, Willie B. We'll see. But
well, he has been so far. No matter how you slice it, he has been so far. But if he can follow a path similar to Mekhi Becton and similar to some other guys who have transitioned inside and done fairly well, then maybe the B word doesn't apply.
All right, fair enough. Ed Valentine, always appreciate your time. Big Blue View. I've been watching every blow-by-blow in training camp, so thanks for providing those reports. Thanks for spending a little time here at MC Show Digital.
Thanks for having me.